Okay, so finally, so what about avoiding problems from happening? How do you go about preventing issues from happening in the first place?
Yeah, so certainly an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so avoiding these entirely, these types of situations would really be the goal. So the first thing that we do within EES is, as I mentioned, we don't do fixed price bids. There's just too much there trying to estimate a sizable project. Maybe for a really small project that's very well defined, every once in a while I might do that, but 99% of the time, we just don't do fixed price bids. We certainly would never do one on something that was hundreds of hours of work because it's just not possible to foresee ahead of time what the potential things are. And you inevitably end up, I think we even did a video on this, where you end up in one of two things where either one, you've just got this open-ended commitment, or two, you're in change notice hell where you're just constantly having to figure out, okay, what are all the changes to some design and things like that. And it's just a mess. And so we don't do that. Now, clients oftentimes balk at that, right? They want the certainty of a fixed price bid. And I 100% understand that. Prior to this, I mentioned the experience that I had. And in that particular case, that contractor did give us a fixed price bid on it. And that was part of the problems that came out of it. And so what I explain to clients and what we try to focus on is that we will give an estimate so that it's not like 100% open-ended. Like it's not like we just say, it'll take whatever it takes. And we will give an estimate. And then we try to schedule regular milestones. Now, those milestones may or may not be like a fixed deliverable, like a circuit board or a release of functionality. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's just a stake in the ground that says, okay, a month from now, let's everybody have a meeting and say, okay, where are we at relative to where we thought we should be and where we want to go? And does everything still make sense? And the idea being that nobody wants a surprise, right? And nobody wants to get to the end of the 500-hour estimate and suddenly be like, well, what do you mean? There's another 300 hours of work or something like that. The goal is for, if something is going to be exceeded, is for that to be recognized, understood, promulgated, and everybody be on the same page as early in the process as possible. And so now sometimes that's harder than others, right? Because it's true. Like you've got a 500-hour project. It's broken down into tasks. The first task is 40 hours and it goes to 60 hours instead of 40. Well, you could immediately run the flag up and say that took an extra 20 hours in that first subtask. But generally, we don't do that because there's enough time remaining in the project that likely can be absorbed because some other task or collection of tasks will take a little bit less time and it'll all sort of come out in the wash. And so there's a balancing act between, at what point do we say, okay, yes, we are likely to exceed what the estimate was versus not. And that is always a balancing act. And I won't claim that we get it right 100% of the time. But what I will say is that we communicate clearly and regularly with our clients. And the point of that is to make sure that everyone understands how things are going and where we're at relative to the work that we have estimated on what the impact of different changes are going to have. Now, it's not always possible to say, oh, this change is going to add 20 hours to the estimate, or this change is going to add 100 hours to the estimate. But what we can do is look at it and say, okay, this is going to have a meaningful impact on the amount of time. Are we sure that we want to continue down that path? And that conversation we have all the time because we will talk to clients. We're working through something. We tried this original idea that they had, but then it turns out that didn't give them whatever user experience they wanted. So, okay, so do we need to shift gears? And we'll talk through that and we'll have that discussion and say, okay, this is what shifting gears means. I mean, it means a non-trivial increase. Now, sometimes we can at least give some scope to that and say that might add 20% or that might add another 100 hours of work. Oftentimes, as we get into a project, obviously many of the assumptions that we made at the beginning when we were doing the estimate will become more concrete. there'll be less assumptions and more, we'll just have more certainty. And so it will allow us to sort of re-estimate or review what ongoing work might take more accurately than we could do at the very beginning. And so the point is to just try and make sure that, one, obviously to try to prevent it from happening at all, but two, if it is going to happen, to make sure that the client is aware as early in the process as possible, that we're working very closely with them to try and manage that and to get through it, so that hopefully at the end everybody it has at least met what the expectations are as they have evolved through. So at the end, there isn't a shock that it went over with that, because that was known sometime earlier in the process. And so that has served us well, again, on the vast majority of our projects. But we never even get to the point where we have to have those awkward conversations that we discussed earlier. Prevention, that regular communication, that's what our approach is to trying to make sure that happens.